Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. In this video, we have so much to go through for Star Citizen. We have the December-November monthly report, which has so many updates to ships, gameplays, and features. 14 ships are talked about, including the Kraken and the Ironclads, as well as, I believe, a new Origin ship. The gameplay there, there's player swimming that's being mentioned in here, as well as AI spec ops stuff. It looks really awesome. And then on top of that, we have some updates to how the patch cycle is going to work for 4.6. We have two brand new ships that are going to be arriving with 4.6 and just a whole lot of more information alongside that. And then on top of that, we have some base building data mines, which look really cool and just kind of give us a fun little tease as to what's to come in the future. So if you're enjoying the content and you want to stick around for more videos like this, feel free to subscribe. I do have channel memberships open if you want to go the extra mile, and feel free to join the community Discord. I'll have a link for that down below, and I'd love to have you there. With that out of the way, though, let's dive right into all the news for Star Citizen. Now, typically, we kind of skip through most of the AI stuff here, but we have a couple things to mention. First, for AI tech and features, through November and December, they worked on the Valacar, improving its ability to utilize submerged positions while avoiding hills. They also unrotted the chase target behavior and removed the movement hearing filter concept. The Valacar can now also attack inanimate objects. Furthermore, new placeholder behaviors were implemented and further developed. I really think this is important because it could be just kind of hinting at us slowly but surely getting the kind of original Apex Valkyrie experience they showed off at CitizenCon 2024, where you can kind of just encounter it in the wild. Now, it'll probably be attached to some sort of sandbox activity or something, but regardless, I don't think it'll be as, contained as the irradiated Valakar. Now, the next thing here is just comical. For the creature pipeline known as Star Pause, work was done on the AI triggered actor state. Radio formations were reported from Squadron 42. The rest of it honestly doesn't matter. I just had to mention the fact that they're calling this Star Pause. I mean, it's part of the bit now. I'm glad they keep going with it, but it's like, I can't imagine it's easy to take that seriously at work or something. Outside of that, they talked about anti-personnel turrets a little bit, just kind of fixing those up a little bit. Some of the things behind them, the tech behind them, but it really isn't too much there. Now, the next thing is AI game intelligence development. Now, the real main thing here is them talking about Mission System V2, which is a huge, huge thing. I don't necessarily know, how far along they are. They're talking a lot about prototypes in this monthly report, so it's hard for me to kind of assume that this thing is anywhere near done. But at the same time, they're putting in some pretty crazy work. I'll have it up on screen if you really want to read through it, but a lot of it is just like, you know, kind of developer talk. For the most part, though, I'm super excited for Mission System V2. I think it'll be a really big deal as to how just missions flow in Star Citizen, and hopefully it opens up the ability for them to actually get some more, exciting variables in certain missions as well. Now, animation had a few things narrative wise. They completed some animations for the ArcCorp Mission Giver, but the main thing here that I'm super excited for is on the gameplay side, the animators worked toward finalizing the Spec Ops AI combat set, as well as two other human sets. Progress was also made on melee and mechanized enemy types, player swimming and navigation, new weapon animations, and creature improvements for the Copion type enemy. Development continued on the background life AI too. Now, this whole paragraph is really awesome for a ton of reasons. The first one is the Spec Ops AI set. This is something I've been looking forward to for so long, and though it's not here yet and it might not be here, super soon, I think it's one of those things that Star Citizen needs to have just more different enemy types. And this Spec Ops AI just sounds like something that sounds awesome to go against, especially if it's on like a high value mission of some kind. Now, they haven't really specified much about it, but again, I think the name kind of implies that they're going to probably use greater tactics, have better weapons, and probably some better armor. So that sounds like something that is really, really cool. Of course, we don't know about the other two human sets that they mention here. It's probably nothing too related to like the Spec Ops AI stuff, so not going to worry about that too much. Then they, of course, mention the melee and mechanized enemy types. This is just a huge one right here because, again, just like the Spec Ops stuff, it's adding this potential flavor to FPS combat that we just have not seen in Star Citizen. Melee combat is basically non existent, especially with enemy AI, unless you're just kind of assassinating them. And then mechanized enemy types sounds like a really cool idea. That could be implying that we get some more mechs. I know that there's, everyone's really wanting the Titan exosuit. I can't say that I'm confident we'll get that this year, but it would be a really cool thing. They certainly could use the atlases for these types of enemies, though. And regardless, I think it's awesome to have enemies that would use mechs. After that, player swimming and navigation, that I mean, come on, dude. Player swimming, that sounds like something we would get in like 5 years. But I know it's silly, but it's just one of those things that Star Citizen just doesn't feel like it would have in the game because it's been so long without any real mention of swimming at all. But I mean, hey, it looks like they're working on it, and not that we'll get it anytime soon, but it gets me excited for the future. And then, of course, the new weapon animations and the creature improvements for the Copion type enemy. I think it just implies that we're going to get some new guns and some new creatures, probably in the near ish future. Now, of course, I know it's a lot of yapping for just the animation section, but there's like so much in there that sounds really exciting, and I am very hopeful for all those things that they mentioned in there. The next thing, we have the character art section. Unfortunately, there's just nothing important here. They're just talking about concept art team exploring items for armors and whatnot, and subscriber flare items. It's just not really valuable information. My fingers are crossed that Starware is secretly going to release like within the next 6 months. I know I'm huffing it right now, but I would love to see Starware in the game. Now, moving on to the ship sections, our favorite section. First thing here is in the UK, progress is also made on numerous vehicles coming later this year, including the Gattac Raylan, which entered production in mid November with the initial artists building on the pre production work done during the white box phase. Gold standard work on the Aegis Hammerhead continued. Areas were refined across the ship, as well as breaking out various parts into an Aegis kit for use across future ships as per MISC, RSI, and Drake. The Miss Hull B passed its white box review and moved into gray box, while the Drake Ironclad, Ironclad Assault, and Command module progressed toward their gray box reviews. In December, the Ironclad Assault received particular focus after the base ship resolved a lot of the required core setup. The first playable review gate of the Command module's functionality was completed in mid December. The Greycat UTV also continued through development, including updates to the dashboard after discussions with UI on how to best integrate the required screens, as well as a motion capture session to add a new enter exit animation. The third in the series of larger RSI ships, the Galaxy, entered pre production. That is worth noting. We're going to talk about that in a little bit here. And then four currently unannounced vehicles progressed through the pipeline too. The ship closest to release passed both its white box and gray box reviews, with only a few minor technical details needing further iteration. The second is progressing quickly due to the availability of its existing brand kit. The third passed white box following a hugely successful concept stage. And the fourth, from a manufacturer that hasn't been worked on for a while, probably Origin, entered production after the initial concept phases resolved issues with its interior components. This next part is obviously exciting. The North American teams continued work on the Kraken. Drake's capital ship continued through Whitebox, and the goal now set for its Whitebox review in February. The team made changes to the interior to aid navigation throughout, as well as simplifying methods of moving vehicles and cargo, especially with the latter traversing through the ship. A lot of work was done to ensure changes have no impact on the privateer variants when that goes into production in the future. The team also held a walkthrough meeting to show the ship ahead of the formal gate review, preparing the downstream teams for the sheer scope of work required. Two unannounced vehicles were also worked on. The first ended 2025 with a review gate in preparation for its early 2026 release, while the second moved through white box with the team focusing on its unique hero rooms. Now, the first thing we have to point out here is the Galaxy. And I know it's kind of like, why are we talking about the Galaxy? We know when it's releasing and all that jazz. I think the important thing to actually point out here is the fact that the RSI Galaxy is going to have a year or a little bit less of production time before it's supposed to release. And I think that is actually a huge thing to point out. Now, I know that the RSI brand has gotten a ton of work over the past couple of years. So the whole brand kit is probably filled out so much, and I can assume that it's going to help decrease the development time for that thing by a huge margin. But it's almost surprising that at this point, a ship as big as the Galaxy, as complex as the Galaxy, could actually release in a year or less with production time. And I just generally think that's a really good sign for CIG. Not that it applies to all ships, but I certainly think it shows that they're kind of getting a little bit quicker when it comes to putting these ships out. Now, the next thing we have to mention too is the Kraken. The Kraken is going to hit potentially gray box within the next month or so. It's hitting its white box review in February. And then, of course, after that comes gray box. And that is a really exciting moment for us. Now, I'm not going to say it's going to have the same type of situation as the Galaxy, But given the fact that they have been building out the Drake kit a lot, who really knows how soon that we can get the Kraken? I'm still betting on probably Invictus 2027, but who knows? Maybe it could be before then. Fingers crossed, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Now, the Ironclad Assault, and the command module stuff is very clearly going very well. I think we're going to see that absolutely at Invictus this year, and it's probably going to be in a really solid and polished state. It looks like they're going to hit a gray box review pretty soon, and that gives them like 4 to 5 months to get that thing kind of fully pushed out the door. Now, of course, it could technically release before then, but there's just absolutely no way they don't take advantage of Drake Defense Con this year, because literally last year there was zero Drake Defense Con or anything like that. And they said they were going to come back with a bang next year. And I certainly think that's what the Ironclads are going to be for. The last thing I think we can really note here is that one of the unannounced ships being from a manufacturer that hasn't been worked on for a while just has to be Origin. I mean, there's absolutely no way it's anything else. At least I kind of hope not, because we really, really could use an Origin ship or vehicle of any kind. Now, I know you might be asking, is this the G12? Highly unlikely, just given the fact that it says it's an unannounced vehicle, and I'm pretty sure they would at least announce that it is the G12. There's not much we can say here. There's a lot of exciting news in here, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. But it's certainly just going to be a waiting game until we can get some of these really cool ships. I think it's going to be a banger year for ships. So I'm curious as to your thoughts on this down below. Now, moving on from that, we kind of hit into core gameplay here. Now, they talk about some things like engineering and some 4.4 stuff, but the main stuff we're going to get into starts with crafting. Now, they talk about how they get this to tech preview readiness, which enabled a limited round of course, Evocati testing conducted the past couple days, which we know about. The initial preview included the core loop of creating various items and adjusting their stats based on material quality. Additional recent work on the feature includes shop support for material quality and the ability to sell partially full or mixed containers, which I think is a big deal right there. Progress is also made on the main crafting UI, including the queue screen, selecting the delivery destination for crafted items, refunding materials, and functionality to dismantle previously crafted items. At this stage, the core functionality is present. The devs are preparing to review player feedback before polishing the feature ahead of its eventual release. So I'm not going to jump the gun and say that we're going to get this for 4.7, but I mean, 4.7.1, 4.8, I'm just kidding. Who knows? But I think we are certainly going to get that first initial release pretty soon here. For flight gameplay, the team continued their efforts towards the improved flight model, including various adjustments to control surfaces. This also included exposing more options to design to allow for more control over atmospheric flight behaviors. The team also continued their task for the command module used by the Drake Caterpillar and Ironclad. The first playable version of the feature was presented, showcasing seamless handover of the controls from the host ship to the command module and vice versa. This work also allowed them to address various docking related issues and improve the debug tools. Towards the end of the year, time was dedicated to addressing issues with the existing transit and freight elevator system, which were either reported by players using the issue council, the player experience team, or internal QA staff as major issues affecting various gameplay loops. Working with the QA team, core gameplay addressed bugs with very high reproductions or issues that had the tendency to manifest permanently. However, there are still many issues present that continue to be addressed. For the mission system, the designers now have the ability to specify conditional mission completions. For instance, Alpha 4.6 includes missions that can be completed by fulfilling one objective or an alternative objective. The team also investigated some of the root issues behind drop off lockers that caused courier missions to be disabled. They also provided support for the various new missions and content deliverables, such as improvements to the progress tracker used for various events. They also continued work on the inventory rework with internal reviews and bug hunting sessions. Early steps were also established on capital ship refueling, leading to a task breakdown and scheduling. And then the last thing they mentioned is just the lamp stuff for ships, which is awesome. I really think that crafting and the inventory rework are probably going to come side by side with each other. And that is probably not next patch, but it's going to be soon. I really do think so. That just like the engineering stuff, I think they're going to probably test it out for just a tiny bit and then get it out the door, because it's a huge deal to have it in the game sooner than later, because crafting needs it. And just generally, the inventory screen just sucks, and we need it to definitely be updated at this point. For economy, there wasn't a ton to talk about here. The devs are also looking into vehicle ballistic weapons to give them their proper caliber designations and operational costs associated with their size and type. That's really the main thing there. I think that's probably just for getting physicalized ammo boxes for ships, but I'm not too sure. Mission design had nothing really important in there, but there was a picture associated with it. If you have any guesses to what this is or what it's supposed to do, what it's associated with, whatever, I would love to hear down below because right now I'm looking at this thing thinking I've never seen that before. I have no idea what that really is used for, but maybe it's something that's, already in the game. Narrative, nothing too crazy there, unfortunately. Online technology, they talked about an internal tech demo for item recovery tier 1, which I know is controversial, but is what it is. And with this, they were able to properly establish the priority needs of downstream teams. And then work also continued on instancing, with the instance manager working as the cornerstone to validate the feature's inner workings, which is obviously great news. I think we're definitely getting instancing this year. R&D had nothing worthwhile. It's a lot of really cool stuff that I'm sure if you're kind of more into I guess the back end stuff, maybe that it's going to be a lot more interesting, but it's definitely not the most appealing thing to talk about. I'll say that much. Now, that's it for the monthly report for November and December. Quite frankly, this is a lot more information than what we would typically get for a typical monthly report like this. Looking at last year's, I mean, there's just nothing compared to what we have here that at least significantly in terms of features or ships or anything like that. So I think we really got, we kind of hit the jackpot with this monthly report. And I'm super hoping that over the next couple months to kind of maintain this feature update and ship updates so we can kind of really know what they're doing behind the scenes. Now, that's it for the monthly report. I know it's a whole lot of information. I apologize for yapping so much, but on to the next thing. I just watched the new ISC that released about an hour ago, and there's some pretty cool updates in there. I mean, it's mainly just a patch watch, but Jared did discuss how patches are going to work for 2026, and it sounds really, really promising. Now, the first big thing to note is that patches are bi-monthly now. So every other month, we're going to be getting a patch, and it's going to be a major patch. He specifically names 4.6, 4.7, and 4.8 in the video. And I think that's pretty obvious that at this point, just kind of dot patches are gone for at least the time being, which I'm totally okay with. Now, he talked about the space in between these big patches. So the month where there's going to be no patch, they're going to specifically be releasing new spaceships. They're going to be releasing some new contracts and stuff like that, doing things like the pricing surge with the economy so they can kind of test things out and also keep it somewhat fresh for players during the kind of downtime, I suppose you could say. Now, one of the big things that is notable is that 4.6 is going to be getting two new ships. One ship being the Apollo Hermes. We've all kind of known about this at this point, and it will be releasing with the patch, and we'll get an ISC on that next week. But the second ship looks to be a salvager mole of some kind. Now, I could be wrong here. I'm not a mole guy or an Argo guy really at all, but it very clearly looks like the silhouette for kind of an Argo mole salvage variant. So I'll have it up on screen, of course, but if you have any comments on this or if there's any other thoughts you have, feel free to let me know down below. I think it looks awesome. It has that cool animation to it, and it was revealed in a pretty silly way, but I thought it was still pretty funny. So that ship will be releasing in a few weeks. We know that. And then on top of that, he had also name dropped a couple features and content that we know are probably going to be releasing in 2026. That being Genesis planets, instancing, inventory rework, and crafting. I believe those are the features he was talking about. And then content wise, Rockcracker, Municipal Works, and Tactical Strike Groups. He is basically saying that those were releasing in 2026. And I think that is just another form of them doubling down on the fact that these are arriving this year. Now, on top of all that, the best part of this whole thing is the fact that ISC or video content in general is going to be happening every week, at least, for the most part. There's of course going to be downtimes, but he did say that every week there should be some sort of ISC, SCL behind the ships, whatever it is, there will be video content. And that is one of the best things I heard out of the whole video, honestly. Now, that's really it for the ISC. I think it was an excellent little bit of information drop. And I think, honestly, they're also making room for tech previews. They discussed this last year. I don't know if anyone remembers it, but they discussed it in SCL with Benoit how, hey, how are we going to be doing tech previews whenever we have P2 cycles happening every other second? And they discussed how they would kind of have to do some adjustments. And I think this is very clearly part of that adjustment so that hey, while 4.6 is out to live, you can have a bunch of tech previews going with crafting, inventory, whatever it is. And I think it's going to be a really good idea for them to just kind of get everything kind of ironed out before they release it. Honestly, I think the ISU is a banger, and I just cannot wait for next week because we'll be talking about the Hermes, I suppose, and just in general, just video content is super nice to see again. Now, like I promised before, we're talking about some base building data mines. I'm going to go through these. I know it's going to be kind of annoying because it's just a lot of me listing stuff, but just, bear with me for a sec. So for placeable structures, we have living quarters, small, medium, and large, construction hub, large, T-junction passage, straight passage, fabrication hangar, small and medium, crafting kiosk, liquid extractor, small, water pump, small, solid extractor, large, fuel generator, small and large, hangar, small, medium, large, liquid refinery, small, solid matter refinery, large, foundation square, and foundation triangle. Editor mode actions, we have fly to structure, move structure, rename structure, repaint structure, repair structure, upgrade structure, and structure integrity. And then land claim actions, prospecting plot, beacon plot, and create plot. Now, I mean, like, I'm not gonna sit here and say, "Oh, base building is coming the patch after crafting." There's absolutely no way it does, and if it does, holy, I would love to be wrong about that. But I'm almost certain that this is the case of, the tech preview has some code from, stuff that they're working on, of course, behind the scenes, and this is just some of that. Like, there's just no way we get this stuff in the near future, unfortunately. And if we do, again, I would love to be wrong. I just think it's exciting to talk about. It kind of reminds us that they are in fact working on it. We just need to, you know, have just a tad bit more patience, I guess. But I still can't wait for base building. I think about it all the time, especially when it comes to like the 1.0 stuff. So I really can't wait for this. But again, this is more or less just a tease for us rather than it being like a hint at what's coming next. So just keep that in mind going through it. Now, that really is going to do it for this video. I know this is a hella long video. I apologize. I try to scrunch everything up, but you know how I am. I talk a lot and I love talking about this game. So, I was definitely going to go over a bit. Now, outside of that, I would love to hear your thoughts on anything and everything we talked about in this video because there is a whole lot to be discussed. The only thing I could really say is that I think it's going to be a excellent couple of months. I think 4.7 is probably going to be a massive patch for us, but again, we'll get there when we get there. But really, I'm super excited for what's next. Again, thank you so much for being here and watching till the end. I hope you have an excellent day, and I will see you in the next video.